Hello and welcome to the Spirit Spa, where today's message from the wilderness is what is a nervous breakdown and why do we actually call it a nervous breakdown? I'm Karen Packwood. This is the Spirit Spa, an online sanctuary dedicated to supporting you if you're in the early stages of recovering from a nervous breakdown, so that you can understand why the breakdown has happened to you and identify your next natural steps towards recovery. So, first of all, I'd like to explain why I actually want to take some time today to actually talk about the phrase nervous breakdown. Many of you might be aware that the phrase nervous breakdown is no longer used in the medical profession, and a nervous breakdown is not considered to be a recognised illness. However, I feel really passionate about the fact that the phrase nervous breakdown is absolutely the perfect sort of title, if you like, for the illness that people feel when they're actually having what I call a nervous breakdown. And I'm going to explain that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to begin with an accepted dictionary definition of a nervous breakdown. Then I'm going to explain what I agree with about it, and then I'm going to explain what I disagree with about it and why. So, I've got my notes here. So, the dictionary definition of a nervous breakdown is this. A nervous breakdown is a period of mental illness resulting from severe depression, stress, or anxiety. Now, there are some components about this that I agree with. When we have what becomes a nervous breakdown, when we fall apart, when we shatter into that state of oblivion that we identify as a feeling as if we're in a nervous breakdown, it's true that we probably have some elements of depression, stress, anxiety, and I would also add in trauma there as well. And of course I know that you could probably use trauma as an umbrella term for those three things as well, but I think there's sometimes something slightly different about trauma. Now, it's very true that most people that I work with, and certainly in my own experience, there were elements of depression, stress, anxiety going on, either consciously or unconsciously. For me, I was pretty oblivious to the fact that I was, feeling such extreme stress and anxiety and depression just before my breakdown. I was completely oblivious to it. Some people, are more aware of it. But actually, one of the things that I often find with my clients, like myself, is that when you have the breakdown, it kind of comes out of the blue. You've been so detached from some of the feelings that that you're experiencing, that actually the breakdown just kind of comes out of the blue. So that part of the definition I agree with. The part of the definition that I disagree with is the fact that it's just defined as a mental illness. Now, of course, it is partly a mental illness, of course it is, but it's more than that, and this is something that I feel really passionate about, and I feel it's not talked about enough, which is why I do the work that I do. And for me, a nervous breakdown is not just about what is going on for us mentally, it's also what's going on for us emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And often these things are not talked about, they're not worked with. When we go to our GP, we're offered antidepressants, we might be offered a short course in counselling, but we're not offered an awful lot in terms of really in-depth work to work with what's going on for us spiritually and emotionally. And again, that's why I do the work that I'm doing now, because I feel so passionate about this. It was something that I struggled with so badly when I was on my knees with my own breakdown. I didn't know where to go. My doctor did give me antidepressants, and you'll know from a previous video of mine about antidepressants that I was so grateful for those antidepressants. I felt so bad that I was very happy to take those antidepressants, and I do feel that they helped me to a certain extent. I was also offered counselling, and it was going to be a 6-week process, 6-week period of counselling, which is nothing really when you're in a terrible state of depression and nervous breakdown. But actually, looking back now, you know, and again, but at the time actually I was horrified, because I went along to my first counselling session, and at the end of the counselling session, it was with a mental health nurse, and at the end of my first session she told me that I did not need counselling because my intellectual understanding of what was happening to me was so good. And of course I had a very good understanding. I had a training in counselling behind me. I'd been a special educational needs coordinator working with children with emotional issues and so on. So I knew an awful lot about what was going on intellectually, but it completely missed the point of what was going on for me emotionally and physically and spiritually. And I was in desperate need of support. I really needed somebody to help me at that time. Couldn't do it on my own. I was so frightened. I was so lonely. I had a good intellectual understanding of it, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to actually look after myself. I did not know what to do. I was so shattered, fragile, broken. And I know from my clients, and I know from those of you that have written to me, that this is something that many of you identify with as well. So you know, it doesn't work for me to just call it a mental illness. So why is this important? It's important because if you're somebody who is really feeling very lonely with all of this at the moment, if you're feeling extremely isolated, if you feel like the tree behind me, that you have completely snapped, because that's what it feels like, doesn't it? When you have, you know, when you've had that shattering experience of in the after of the breakdown, and in the immediate aftermath, you feel as if you have been shattered. You feel as if you have been, you know, cut in two. You don't know who you are anymore. You don't recognize yourself. You're so frightened. You're so immensely fragile. You don't know what to do to help yourself. And it is more than what is going on for you mentally. It is the physical weakness. It is the emotional agony that you find yourself in. It's the lack of trust that you find in yourself and in the world. You know, these are all things that need to be dealt with, and you know, antidepressants can help some things, but they don't help everything. And so I feel it's very important that we understand that a nervous breakdown is not just a mental illness, it's a spiritual, emotional and physical illness as well. Now this is why I call my messages from the wilderness, because I feel that when you have actually had your breakdown and you are snapped into and you are bereft because there aren't services out there to support you with that kind of inner wilderness feeling, I call it the spiritual wilderness. When you're completely alone there, you know, you just don't know where to turn to, and it's so important that you begin to work with your breakdown from this emotional and spiritual place as well. And this is what my work's about. And as you'll know from my previous videos, you'll know that I have been encouraging you over the last couple of videos to begin to work with a journal, and I've given you some wilderness writing activities, and I'm going to give you another one today. Only this one isn't a writing activity, it's still a journal activity, it's still using creativity. Creativity is a really important tool in the healing journey, and I'm going to be creating some videos around creativity and why creativity is so helpful in future videos. But just trust me on it for the moment, that creativity is very helpful, a very helpful tool. Please don't judge yourself. Please don't begin to think to yourself, well, I'm not creative, because I'm not talking about you being skilled at any particular art form or anything like that. I'm talking about you connecting with your inner creator, your inner healer. And I'm going to give you a task today if you would like to do it. And pretty much anybody can do this. In my previous videos, I've sort of separated it into people who still need to rest and people who are still actively healing. But even those of you that are still at that point where you're kind of really, really resting a lot in bed, I think you can still have a go at this activity as well. Of course, it's optional, but it's an invitation that I would really encourage you to do. So I'm going to show you a little bit of an example of something from my own journal. You can see I have hundreds of journals that I've used over the years as I've been on my recovery journey. And I just want to find for you, if I can find it, you can see, I'm just going to cover up the writing obviously, because that's private. But I want you to see this. This is an example of a kind of a doodle that I've done. So you can see, there's no artwork there. I haven't ever been to, art school or anything. There's no artwork there. But what there is there's just journaling. It's just getting a pencil and allowing the pencil to kind of, channel what's going on for you deep down, internally, subconsciously, connecting with your subconscious and connecting with the non-verbal part of yourself. And this is the task for you today. I want you to think about last week where we talked about the emotions. And I'm not going to ask you to talk about or think about a specific emotion today. I'm just going to ask you to connect with your kind of nervous breakdown as a whole, almost as if it was like a person within you. What would it feel like? But I don't want you to think about it too much. I literally just want you to take your journal, get a pencil, and I want you to begin to draw it. And what I've done is I've created an audio meditation to help you with this, and there'll be the link to it in the comment section below. So you can listen to that, and it will guide you into the doodling activity, if you like. I'm going to call it doodling because I don't want to put people under any pressure to think that they've got to be a Picasso or anything. But just give it a go. I'm going to guide you through it. I'm going to explain it in a little bit more detail, but take some time to really connect with the phrase nervous breakdown, the phrase mental illness, spiritual illness, physical illness, all of these things that I've talked about today, and we're just going to draw it. Now, why is this important? Because as we begin to release these things, as we begin to bring them out of us, this is where the healing starts to take place. Keeping it all locked inside ourselves, not talking about it, not expressing it in any way, keeps it all trapped. It doesn't allow the energy of it to flow. It doesn't allow it to get, like fresh air to it, if you like, and allow it to breathe in any way. And we need to allow the feelings to have some breath to them. We need to allow them to bring some sunshine into them. And by doing that, we can begin to unpick the knots of them, if you like. We can loosen them up a little bit. We can get to know them a little bit. It's amazing what you begin to actually identify once you start doing some writing, once you start doing some drawing and so on. It's a first step. It's an easy step. You don't have to think too much. You don't have to even feel too much. You allow it to just be. And then things begin to come to you. Awareness begins to come to you. So I'm not going to talk about that in too much more detail now, because I've talked quite a lot today, more than I do normally. But I'm going to do the meditation for you so that you can use the meditation to help you and guide you. So how can I help you further? Well, as ever, you are very welcome to email me with any questions that you have in relation to anything that I have mentioned today. You can either email them to me at karenpackwood@gmail.com, or you can leave them in the comments box below. Thank you so much to everybody that does do that. The dialogue that goes on is so informative. It really helps me know what content's put into these videos for you as well, in addition to what I feel that is going to be helpful for you. So that's great. Please please email me at karenpackwood@gmail.com, or as I say, leave the comments in the comments box below. If you like the video, please like it. Please subscribe to the channel if you would like to receive regular updates, and don't forget to press that bell to make sure you get the notifications regularly. And what I would suggest that you do now is take 15 to 20 minutes to listen to the video, grab yourself a piece of paper, grab yourself a pencil, and just take some time to really connect in with the energy of the nervous breakdown. Come into connection with what it is, what it feels like inside you. So I'm Karen Packwood. This is the Spirit Spa, an online sanctuary dedicated to supporting you if you're in the early stages of recovering from a nervous breakdown, so that you can identify why the breakdown has happened to you and your your next natural steps towards recovery. So I'm wishing you a very peaceful and loving day.